Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones. And we're back, or at least I'm back. I wasn't on the last show. I was out of town, and we're going to get you all caught up on the Ducks action and the homestand for the beginning of the season. We're going to talk about some injury news, some player updates, a little bit of league news, and, of course, fan questions. We always round out the show with those at the end as well. So to start the season, Eddie, the Ducks, the wounded Ducks, had a lot of players out. No Getzlaf, no Eaves, no Kessler, Vatanen, Lindholm, and no Miller. So the Ducks went into this game against Arizona, Eddie, without $30 million worth of players. That was something that Phil and I had calculated on Phil's show last week, if you didn't catch it. But we were on there talking about hockey, and the Ducks were missing a lot of players, but they came out in this game against Arizona, Eddie, to start the season. It didn't look good. Ducks got down 4-1 in this game, and they ended up rallying and coming back. A couple stories to talk about in this one. We got Corey Perry and the way the Ducks rallied, the power play and different things like that. But overall, the Ducks were able to come back and win this one, Eddie, 5-4.
Yeah, I mean, what a great way to start the season, too, and to have a big comeback against a good young team in Arizona that had a little bit of a turnover this season, losing two of the guys we've really known for playing in Arizona for Shane Doan his entire career, and for Mike Smith for the last few years. So no Smith, no Doan, come in with a bunch of young guys, and the Ducks get victimized by pretty much four of the Coyotes' best young guys in Duclair, who is really the Duck killer. He pretty much scores or gets a point in every game he plays against Anaheim. Clayton Keller gets a goal, Max Domi gets a goal, and Christian Fischer gets a goal. So all the all the Coyotes' young guys victimizing the Ducks, but they make a good effort here, and they're down 4-1 until 5 minutes to go in the second period, and they get two quick ones, one from Perry and then one from Kase, and that's where they really get back into it. I mean, if that goes in 4-2, maybe 4-1 into the third period, I doubt they make a comeback. So, I mean, we talked about this multiple times. Two quick goals can mean the difference going into the third period, and obviously it does, and Cogliano gets one late to tie the game, and then Raquel gets a kind of a lucky bounce, a really bad play by Domingue in net, and it kind of just finds its way into the net. The Ducks end up winning, but I know a great, exciting way to start the season.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that fans can be happy about in this game, Eddie, is Corey Perry's play. He ended up getting two goals in this one, one with a little bit of a lucky bounce too as well, but he got those two. We saw him ruffle up Domingue, crashing into him for a little bit, and Domingue wins the Oscar for flopping, and turns around and gets in Perry's face, which of course all the penalties go against the Ducks, which we figured that was going to happen. We even see Gibson get involved in this one too, Eddie. He has some choice words for Domingue, and he gets a 10-minute misconduct as well. So things got kind of crazy, but I think that whole situation and the way it went down, I think it ended up helping the Ducks because they seemed to get fired up and come back in this one. And like you said, in the last 30 minutes, they outscored Arizona 4-0.
Yeah, and it really came down to the two lines that we really could only see generating offense when this game started. It was Raquel centering Perry and Cogliano, and then it was, I believe, Vermette centering Kase and Silfverberg. Other than that, I didn't really see too much offense going to come from Bowl and Grant, Ritchie, Rasmussen, Wagner. So it did come down to the makeshift two top lines that the Ducks had, and obviously that top line of Cogliano, Perry, and Raquel was the killer in this game. Each of them had 3 points. So it was a big effort, and it really kick-started that homestand in Honda Center. The Ducks, obviously, we'll talk about the other games up and down and the next 3 games after this, but what an exciting way to start the season. I mean, across the NHL, it was an exciting start to the season. A bunch of hat tricks. Ovi ended up having 7 goals in his first 2 games. So not only this game, there was a bunch of games that were exciting to start the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about the Vegas Knights, too, in a little bit later in the way that they've started off, 3-0-0. and their home opener as well. We'll kind of talk a little bit more in detail about that. But as far as the Ducks go, this game looked good. Special teams was a little bit of an issue, and this is kind of going to be a theme for the Ducks so far in these first 4 games. But they went 0 for 4 in the power play, gave up 2 power play goals against Arizona, but they ended up pulling this one out. They ended up hosting Philly in the next game. And, another issue, too, for the Ducks has been scoring first. In this game, Philly scores first. The Ducks, get one back. They score. Philly scores again. The Ducks get another one back. But they ended up, ultimately losing this one in overtime. They get another point, though, Eddie. But, kind of a lack of chemistry, again, for the Ducks. Again, they're without all those players we mentioned. They're also without Ritchie. Ritchie left the first game with an injury, so the Ducks were really even more shorthanded in this game against Philly, but they're still able to scratch out a point.
Yeah, and I mean, getting a point when you're down that many guys. I mean, you already win game 1 when you're missing so many guys, and you almost win game 2. You get it to overtime and at least get a point. It's impressive in a way. I mean, it's disappointing. You would like to get the 2 points, but if you'd have told me at the beginning of the season that the Ducks were going to be without Getzlaf and Kessler, Lindholm, Vatanen, and Eaves, and they were going to, start the season 2-1-1, I would have been happy. So getting a point against a pretty good Philadelphia team, it's good. And I think they played a decent game. And this was the start of a great 3-game stretch for John Gibson. He was great in this game. He only allowed 3 goals on 37 shots. Kase had another strong game, had a great assist on the Vermette goal, and I think it was a good effort from some people, but it's very hard to judge this lineup right now with so many guys out. I mean, again, the top line for the Ducks was Raquel, Perry, and Cogliano. You had Silfverberg and Kase centered by Vermette again, and Giovanni Fiore made his debut in this game, but ended up playing on the 4th line. There wasn't a lot of places you could draw offense from. So it's really hard to judge this team at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's, the case through most of these games. I mean, like you said, the Ducks are shorthanded. They're, of the 4 games, this is the one where they had the least players that they could put out there, obviously, with Ritchie also being out, and he's still been out the last couple games. But, the Ducks scratched out a point. They didn't score on the power play again, which is going to be a theme happening through all, the 4 games on this homestand. And of course they lost in overtime, which we know how great they are at their overtime play, but still, they got that point, like you said, with a, super depleted team really in these first 2 games. So 3 out of 4 points isn't bad in the first 2. And then they, you have Calgary come to town the next game, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to be automatic. Calgary has not won since the Stone Age. If you look at the different records, they hadn't won a regular season game in 25 attempts. You count the playoffs, they hadn't won 29 games in a row. So you're looking at this game and you're thinking, okay, the Ducks are going to get a point. Ryan Getzlaf comes back. He plays in this game. But kind of some struggles for the Ducks in this one. They go 0 for 5 on the power play. They really did pour it on in the 3rd period, Eddie. But Smith was in net for Calgary, and we've talked about this before. Smith isn't the greatest goaltender. I know you and Patrick talked about this on the last show, but he, for some reason, he plays well against the Ducks. And yeah, the Ducks again didn't have their full roster, but I mean, the Ducks poured it on the 3rd period, and he didn't let 1 goal go in.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the end of an era almost. The streak's finally over. It's Mike Smith, of course, who ends the streak for Calgary. But Smith just seems to rise to the occasion over the last few seasons. Anytime he faces 40-50 shots, the guy seems to just dominate. I don't know what it is. Ducks had 43 shots in this one, couldn't get 1 past him. He was great in this game. I'm not going to say he was the sole reason that Calgary won this game. The Ducks didn't get a ton of great chances on him. There were 0 for 5 on the power play, so there were some issues that you have to sort out there. But he was great and really a big factor in why Calgary finally ended the streak at Honda Center.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think part of the issue was in the 3rd period, like you said, the Ducks got a lot of chances, but they weren't getting a lot of the secondary chances. They weren't getting to the rebounds as much. Smith was blocking the puck away from the guys and whatnot. So they had chances, but not necessarily grade A chances. I mean, not taken away from Smith. He still played a great game as well. But Yeah, you really thought the Ducks were going to win this game. I mean, you're playing the Flames. The Flames haven't won there in over a decade basically, and unfortunately the Ducks couldn't get it done. Not a bad game. They played kind of average in the first maybe 30 minutes, and then the second 30 they really turned it on, but they just couldn't quite get it done. And unfortunately the power play still looks kind of out of sync. Like we said, the chemistry is still not there on the team. Yes, they got Getzlaf back, but you're still missing all these other players, and ultimately that's kind of going to be the theme for the Ducks in these opening homestand, and probably for the next couple weeks, as they're trying to get more and more guys back. But one thing we did like in this game, and we keep seeing it now, is the old Corey Perry is back. We see him just take a beating in front of the Calgary net earlier in this game. And then, Giordano decides to keep whacking him after the fact. And then the next Oscar award this week goes to Giordano, who flops down on the ground. I don't know if it's Deming or him who gets the number one, award, but they both get it. And unfortunately, Hammock jumps in there, and then all this mayhem goes on. But in the end, Eddie, you hate to say it, and Ducks fans know this, the Ducks get more of the penalties as the end result, even though Perry was getting whacked up and down all over the ice on that series or sequence.
Yeah, but he seems feistier this season. He seems to be ready to go no matter what. I mean, obviously he ended up having a fight in this game against Travis Hamonic, and like you said, he got the extra two. But yeah, he's going to the dirty areas. He's always in front of the net when he's playing well. He's making life hell for the opposing goaltenders, and he was doing that to Mike Smith in this game, and he did it to Louis Domingue in the first game where he ran him behind the net. But that's Perry's game, and obviously the offense was really only there for game one. But it's good to see him playing the style of hockey that we're used to seeing him playing it, and hopefully that leads to more offense in the next few games. We're only 4 games in, so you can't really say, he's had one good game, and after that he's been bad. He's only getting about 3 shots a game. I think if he ups that, gets a little bit more pucks to the net, then he's gonna keep scoring more goals. But I do believe he'll get hopefully over 30 goals this season. I think he's gonna get back on track and be one of the leading guys for the Ducks offense this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, putting him back with Getzlaf, he didn't have him for the first couple games. So, they're back together. And then we see in the fourth game against, the Islanders, Eaves comes back. So all 3 of them are out there together. And, this was an interesting game. The Ducks, obviously, they only play the Islanders twice a year, once here and then once in New York. And in this one, finally, the Ducks score first, Eddie. Andrew Cogliano gets the first goal on this one. Islanders answer back. But then the Ducks get a couple more goals, including Patrick Eaves, his first game back, and he gets a goal. So the crowd went nuts on that one, of course. And the Ducks look good in this game. They ended up winning this one 3-2. They could have won it 4-2. Grant would have had his first NHL goal, but the Islanders challenged it, and the goal was overturned because of the awesome offsides challenge rule that's still intact, which we can kind of go into that a little bit. But overall in this game, Ducks look good. Winning this one, again, the only thing is they didn't score on the power play, Eddie, but they've got 5 points out of a possible 8. Things are looking good for the Ducks through the first 4 games with a depleted roster.
Yeah, and really they looked very good from the second period on, barring a couple of defensive lapses. I think Chimera found himself in front of the net alone on John Gibson somewhere in the second period. But, Gibby played great. This is his best game of the season, and he made a good save on that one. But the first period, other than Andrew Cogliano's goal, was just awful. At one point, I think they were getting outshot about 18-4 or something like that. So to come out of that first period tied at 1 was huge for the Ducks. And, Andrew Cogliano has continued a great start to the season. He's leading the Ducks in points with 5 points in the 4 games they've played, and he had 2 in this one. Getzlaf gets his first 2 points of the season. Like you said, Eaves in his first game of the season gets a goal, which is a good sign because that was a hot topic in the offseason when the Ducks re-signed him. Is he going to be able to do what he did last year? And I mean, to get a goal in your first game of the season is always great. So hopefully he can continue that. But yeah, it was a good effort from the Ducks. I think Gibby was by far the best player of the night. He saved the Ducks on multiple occasions. And he's continued a torrid start to the season. He's been probably, if you have to pick one, it's hard to choose between Raquel, Cogliano, and Gibson, but I think right now you'd have to say Gibson has been the Ducks' best player so far.
Yeah, he looks a lot different, honestly. He looks better. I think the first game, he kind of looked like the Gibson we've seen before, letting in a couple iffy goals, ones that he probably should have stopped and whatnot. But these last three games, he's really been on. I mean, especially this game, like you said, against the Islanders. There were a couple of times that the defense let him down, and he stopped them, and he stopped 39 out of 41 shots. I mean, you can't ask for that much more of a better effort. Obviously, a shutout or one goal, but still, that's pretty damn good. Against this Islanders team that, they had chances. And like you said, they were going bonkers in the first period. You really thought, oh no, is this going to be like an Arizona game? Because the Islanders were really giving it to the Ducks in the first 20 minutes, and Gibson kept them in there, like you said. And that was huge because then the Ducks were able to turn things around. Raquel gets that goal in the second period. Eaves gets one in the third, and they go from there and they end up winning this one. But I agree with you. I mean, if you have to pick one guy, and you look at these four games, and the reason why the Ducks do have 5 points in these 8 possible they could have had, Gibson is an extremely huge reason why they've done so well this far already.
Yeah, and that's what we needed. I mean, with so many guys out of the lineup, you look at the only one position where you've got, you don't have a star player out of the lineup, and that's in net. You've got your starting goaltender in, and he has to be good if the Ducks are going to have a good start to the season, and he has been. I mean, other than, like you said, the Arizona game where he was kind of spotty, wasn't the best start to the season for him, but he built on that. He did well against Philadelphia, did well against Calgary, and now he's had his best game against the Islanders where he gets a win. And I think that's going to do wonders for his confidence. I mean, he doesn't seem like he needs any confidence right now the way he's playing. But, yeah, he looks more composed, I think, this season than he has in past. He's not giving up a lot of juicy rebounds anymore. He's controlling them. And he's not flopping all over the place. I think he's really composed to start the season so far.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that training that you and Patrick talked about last show has definitely helped. The other issue in this one we had talked about a little bit earlier is, the whole coaches challenge thing. As you guys all know, the rules changed this year. Now the coaches can challenge, but if they're unsuccessful, they get a 2-minute, delay a game penalty. So in this one, they challenged. It looks like the Ducks finally scored on the power play, which, obviously they haven't. They're 0 for 15 on the season, but it looked like they did on a great redirect by Grant. And then they challenge it. The Islanders do, and it's taken back. And just like you guys talked about in the last show, I don't like this rule anymore, Eddie. I thought in the beginning it was okay, but this whole nitpicky stuff, and we saw this in the playoffs too last year, and the whole issue of where the skate is, if it's on the ice and whatnot, Eddie, I just think it's making a mess of this situation. And it's, I mean, they put in, the 2-minute penalty to dissuade coaches from doing it. But, I mean, it's still there. I don't know. What do you think about it?
I think it's limited to the amount of times it's been used. I mean, it's early, so we'll have to continue to monitor it throughout the entire season. But I haven't seen a ton of them this year where coaches actually challenged it. Obviously on plays like goalie interference and to check if the puck's crossed the line, they have to review it no matter what. And I've seen a couple of those, but that's always going to be there. But as for coaches' challenges, I haven't seen a ton. I like the change. I never liked really the rule itself. I think it slows the game down a lot. They might as well just review the play in general.
Absolutely.
Just have it already reviewed, and then if it's offside, then call it back, no matter what. If you don't need to have a coach challenge it or anything, but in this one they do end up getting the right call, and it is unfortunate. It's the whole. Is your foot off the ice? Even if your foot's behind the line, is your foot off the ice, then it's offside. And Grant's part of his leg is actually onside, so he is onside if his skate was touching the ice, but his foot is off the ice, so it's offside. And I've never really liked that. I mean, he's technically onside. I mean, his leg is behind the line. He is onside, but his skate is off the ice. And it obviously doesn't come back to hurt the Ducks, so it's not a big issue, but to me personally, I don't see why it matters if his skate's on the ice or not. His leg is behind the line. To me, that means he's onside. But, I don't think the rule is going to change anytime soon. So I don't really know what they're gonna do about that. But for coaches' challenges, at least they're trending in the right direction. I don't think they're ever going to get rid of it, which is kind of unfortunate. But at least we're going to see a lot less of it this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is going to be a lot less of it. I also agree with you on the other part about, if the skate's off the ice, automatically it's like, oh, well, they're offsides. But it's like, I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's like a 3D thing. Like, hey, you're over it. You're skating, but you're still not fully in the zone. I don't know. It just creates a little bit of a problem for me. But I think you're right. They're not going to be using it as much, and maybe they won't have it, in the future. But yeah, it hurt the Ducks on this one in terms of not getting a power play goal, and they're still 0 for 15. But anyways, they still win the game, like you said. Another I guess bigger story, Eddie, in this game, and kind of something that everybody out there can relate to, especially those of you that live in the Southern California region or nearby, is at this game, Eddie. The Ducks honored the victims of the Vegas shooting, and also some of the first responders at this, this hockey game. And I just want to thank the Ducks organization for doing that. There's people that affected us here. Our IT guy was in Vegas when that happened. There's coworkers of mine, outside of obviously this, my real job, that were actually injured from the shooting as well. So I think it was great the Ducks won. They had people there some people that hadn't even been at Ducks games. You read some of the articles they talked about it. They'd been Ducks fans and they hadn't even gone. And so I think it was just a great emotional thing for them to do. And that's really it, Eddie. I'm just really happy and proud of this organization to do that for the locals here, and a lot of us that live, out in this area. We call Vegas a second home. So it's just an emotional win, and I'm just happy the organization did that.
Yeah, and it's really continuing off what Vegas did in their home opener, where they had, normally in a home opener they introduce the players. They had a first responder walk out with each of the players for their intro. So continuing off that, the Ducks end up doing that and inviting a bunch of them to the game and honoring them throughout the game, and I think it was great. I mean, the whole league has really surrounded this Vegas Strong initiative, and I think it's been great, not only for the league but for the Vegas Knights themselves. I think it's unfortunate what happened, but for them to build as a community, it's been great. And sports always, they said this on the broadcast, sports always been seen as a distraction, but it's also a great way to bring people together and form a sense of community. And I think that really hits at home with what Vegas has done with this whole Vegas Strong thing. I think it's been great, and for not only the Ducks but other teams to get involved, it's been great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you did not watch the opening of that Vegas home opener, I highly encourage you to go back and watch it if it's replayed or you recorded it. I watched most of the game, but I also watched the entire opening. And talk about a team doing it right. I mean, Vegas did it more than right, and that was just really great to see how they had all kinds of people, medical people, law enforcement, victims, everything. They had all kinds of people out there in the beginning with the team, which was just fantastic. And you saw that they changed their boards too at the game. They had no advertisements. It was all Vegas Strong stuff. The Ducks also had that obviously on the little LED lights and announcements around the arena too in that game against the Islanders. So it's just great. I think it was the way that they did it worked out. And Vegas, man, this team's been on a roll, Eddie. They're 3-0-0. One of the fan questions was asking, what do we think? Steven asks about the Vegas. Do you think that they're for real? Do you think the Ducks are just, having a little bit of a slower start, or what do you think? You think it's too early to tell? What do you think?
I think it's too early to tell, really. I mean, 2 of the 3 games Vegas has played have been against Arizona. Arizona's going to be one of the worst teams in the Pacific Division and probably in the Western Conference this year. They're a rebuilding team, a bunch of young guys on the team. So I think it's too early to tell. And a lot of their offense and defense is surrounded around James Neal and Marc-Andre Fleury, which we knew it would.
Right.
I mean, Neal has 5 of their 9 goals. and Fleury has been unbelievable in the first 3 games, but again, 2 of them have been against Arizona Coyotes, so it's tough to judge them right now. But it's great. I mean, I think they've built off the momentum of course, being a new team and being in their home arena, and then also around this Vegas Strong thing. I think they've kind of just rode the wave, and it's been great to see so far. And do I think they're going to be in the same spot they are in 20 games? No, they're probably going to be farther down the Western Conference and closer to the bottom of the Pacific Division. I just don't think the talent is there. But you never know. I mean, this is a team who right now is 3-0. There's no Shea Theodore. He's down in the minors right now. There's no Vadim Shipachyov, who is the guy they brought over from the KHL, who was supposed to be their first-line center. A lot of issues going on there with him right now. He's not even playing with the team. And you've got a guy, a young prospect who they got from Minnesota in the expansion draft, and Alex Took, who is down in the minors, and he's letting it up down there. So they have a lot of good young players who are still in the minors who can come up and make an impact on this roster. So there's a good chance they could continue to do well, but it's tough to judge right now. 3 games into the season, we'll have to wait and see in 10, 15, 20 games.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot going on, in Vegas, obviously, right now. I mean, you have the home opener, you have all the stuff going on, of course, at the Mandalay Bay and all of that. And, like you said, the whole league, rallying around the team. You saw the Coyotes tweeting out stuff that was in support of Vegas as well, just like everybody else has been too. But I think you're right. I think it's too early to tell with them. Like you said, 3 games, 2 against Arizona, who's more than likely going to be one of the bottom teams in the Pacific. I mean, it's good. I like seeing Vegas do well, and they have been so far. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Like you said, young talent, but early in the season. And I think that's the same with the Ducks too. I think I'm happy with the Ducks being 2-1-1. We looked at the last couple seasons. They had a slow start last season. We all remember 2 seasons ago the terrible 1-7-2 start in 10 games. And for the Ducks now, where they're at, you got to be happy. Yeah, they're behind the Vegas Knights, but I mean, it's early. This team is still missing a lot of people. Still missing Kessler. Miller's getting close. He's been out. We know that Botnin and Lindholm have started skating. They were projected for November 1st, which may be earlier than that. We're not 100% sure, but we're getting these guys back. The Ducks did lose Kase, which came out today. They sent him to the injured reserve list. Unfortunately, if you missed that, we didn't mention it, but he got hit by a fan favorite, Dougie Hamilton, in the game against Calgary, Eddie, and that was kind of unfortunate. So he is on the IR, so the Ducks are missing him. So with all that going on, the Ducks get players, they lose players. I hope this is not the way it's going to go for the rest of the season. But you have to like what you've seen so far in the first 4 games of the Ducks.
Yeah, I mean, 2-1-1 isn't bad. I mean, they've got 5 points in 4 games. It's not great, but it's not. Again, it's not a slow start that we've seen in the last few seasons. And I mean, obviously, the next games will tell. They've got 3 games coming up this week. They've got the road game coming up against Colorado. Then they've got Buffalo and Montreal. And, Colorado all of a sudden is doing well this season, so that's going to be a tough game going into the Pepsi Center. And then you've got Montreal and Buffalo who are actually in the bottom of the Eastern Conference right now. But 2 teams who can turn it around pretty quick with the talent that they have, especially when you're in Montreal and you've got Carey Price in that. There's always a chance to win there. So these are 3 big games coming up, and it's going to be really key to their success early on and how well their start is. And like you said, with a lot of guys out of the lineup, now Kase is out of the lineup at least. We've got Eaves back, Getzlaf is back. You've got Raquel, Perry, Cogliano, Silverberg. So at least you've got the makings of your regular top 6 there. So, hopefully we get to see Lindholm and Vatanen back soon. And then, you've got almost 100% healthy lineup. And then from there, we can really start to see what the Ducks can do.
Yeah, I agree. And, this kind of leads us to another fan question. We have one from Matt. He asks, with all these injuries, do the Ducks still look like they can be a lock for the playoffs? And again, like we said, it's early. But, I mean, I still think this team is a lock for the playoffs, Eddie. I mean, we've talked about it before the season. We still thought that they would make the playoffs. If they win the Pacific, I think you and I are kind of in agreement. We really don't care. They win it all the time, and it doesn't really mean anything lately. So, if they end up in second place, that's not the end of the world. Even if they end up in third place, it's not the end of the world. But I think they still are a lock. And, Dan Rosen had his Super 16 article come out. He does this throughout the season where he talks about the top 16 teams. And basically, those are the teams that would most likely be in the playoffs, given at that time, that point in time of the season. And the Ducks were number 15. So, to see the Ducks in that grouping with everything that's gone on so far, Eddie, And going back to Matt's question, I still think they are a lock for the playoffs. I mean, where they'll end up, who knows? But I think they'll still make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think so. And last week, me and Patrick looked at each division, and we had the Ducks most likely winning the Pacific Division, being up there with the Edmonton Oilers. But, I think they are a lock for the playoffs if everybody can stay healthy throughout the season, or at least the majority of the core part of this team can stay healthy. Then yeah, I think they are. I don't think Vancouver is going to challenge much this season. I don't think Arizona. I think the Sharks, they've already started off bad. I don't think, they're going to contend for the Pacific Division title. The Kings, again, I think they're going to struggle to score goals. And then it comes down to really Edmonton, Anaheim, and Calgary. And there you go. I think that's probably going to be the top three in the Pacific Division. So, yeah, I think they're a lock. As for winning it, like you said, I don't really care. I'm not too worried about them going out and getting another Pacific Division title. Yes, it would be great for them to do that, but the real goal is to win a Stanley Cup, and that's what the Ducks are striving for before this core team's time runs out. So that's what the real goal is, and hopefully, getting into the playoffs, they can go and achieve that this season.
Yeah, I agree. And the way this, October's gone, I mentioned this before. I'm happy if they come out of October at 500. So they're already 2-1-1. They've got 3 more games to go. I mean, if they ended up, 3-3-1, I would be happy in October, going with all the players that have been out and everything that's been going on. And then, of course, more players getting injured, unfortunately. So I'm happy with the way that they've done. I think that they can easily stay over 500. But in the beginning, going in before we knew what was going to happen with the these 4 games and whatnot with the injuries, 500 would have been good for me. So I like what I'm seeing so far in overall terms of what's gone on in the last week or so. I think one of the issues, and this is what Khalid brings up, and you and I talked about this, is what happened to the power play unit. The Ducks were really good at it a couple seasons ago, and they seem to have fallen off. And I think it's a combination of things with this team, Eddie. I think lack of chemistry, which is something that a lot of people don't talk about. They talk about the goals, they talk about all the stats as far as puck possession and having the other team's zone and the more shots and all of that math and stuff of that I'm not really good at. But when you look at those things, they weigh into it and they're important. You should look at them, but I think the biggest thing with this power play unit is, you're missing some personnel, but it's not just the missing of the personnel, Eddie. Everybody has injuries, but I think it's just the chemistry. I think the problem with this team, and finally seen it kind of come together in these, I'd say the last probably 4 periods, the end of the Calgary game and then this Islander game, is that, you've got all these different players playing with different, players. We've got some new guys playing, Grant, Fury, stuff like that. It's just a big, just like mess of just players in there that I think that's been part of the issue. And I do think kind of going back to some of the stuff the Ducks have done in the past, even with different personnel, they've been passing the puck a little bit too much again on the power play, which has been another issue. So I think those are some of the things that have gone on and why the Ducks power play has struggled, at least in the first, 4 games, Eddie.
Yeah, and really, they're missing a lot of key parts of the power play. Vatanen is arguably the power play quarterback of the team. You're missing him. You're missing Lindholm, who's a great puck distributor on the blue line. You're really banking a lot on early on in the season on Fowler and Montour to run the power play, and then you've got Manson, maybe other. I know Boschman's been out there. I think BX has even been out there at times. Now that Getzlaf is back, he seems to take his spot at the point on the first power play unit with Cam Fowler. Like you said, it's just shifting a lot of things around. You're missing a lot of key pieces. It's tough to judge the power play right off the bat with all the injuries. We had Vermette and Grant on the power play. They ended up getting a goal anyway. that got turned over. But when you have Antoine Vermette and Derek Grant on the power play, you can't expect too much to happen and to have a great power play to start the season. I think there not only chemistry, there are some issues with how the power play is run. Like you said, the passing is off. They seem to look for the perfect pass sometimes. I think the passing is sloppy on the power play as well. They don't seem to get set up well, and they can't really get through the neutral zone against a lot of teams. So I think there's a lot of things they have to do to get that going. And like we've said in the past, special teams are going to be key to the Ducks' success. And the penalty kill has been okay. It's gotten better. It's been decent this season, but the power play needs to turn around. To have no goals on the power play so far this season, that's something that's got to change quick if they're going to continue to win games.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, shorthanded. You would think the Ducks would struggle more shorthanded without Ryan Kessler, but they've actually been okay shorthanded. They haven't been too bad. So something to work on, though, is the power play. Another question we had is from another Eddie. He asks about players and who's reached their potential, or maybe who hasn't reached their potential so far this season. And you and I kind of talked about some of the ones that have. I mean, we've seen Cagliano, Raquel, and Perry. They all lead the team with 2 goals each, and as you mentioned, Cagliano leads the team with 5 points. So those are really the 3 guys that have kind of gotten off to pretty good starts. I mean, obviously Perry got most of his points in the first game, but as we talked about, we've seen that pest in him come back out. So those are the 3 that are looking pretty good so far, in terms of how they're doing. Even Eaves only came back in 1 game, had a goal. So I think right there, Eddie, those are probably your guys that have come back and are doing good so far in these opening games of the homestand.
Yeah, I think Raquel has made an impact in all the games so far. Obviously, offensively, he only was a factor in game 1 and the last game, but I think he's had his chances. He's been getting good areas, but he's been creative with the puck. He's been allowed to be more creative now that he's been in the center of the ice instead of on the wing. So I think that's going to help him out as well. And Cogliano has been unbelievable to start the season. He's been a factor in each and every game, not just offensively but defensively. He's got leading the Ducks with 5 points in 4 games. He's +4. I think he's been great so far, right? And then you got to look at Josh Manson too. I think defensively is where we look to see him excel, and I think he's done that well. But he also has 3 assists so far through the first 4 games. So I think that's a big reason for his success so far. And obviously him being paired with Cam Fowler is great, and that's the go-to unit for the Ducks right now. But yeah, and before he was hurt, I think Ondrej Kase was doing very well for the Ducks. He's got a great engine. He really drives the play on any line he gets put on, and I think that's why we saw him for a bit up with Getzlaf and Perry, and he can really fit in on any line with this team and instantly make that line better. So, obviously he's on the injured reserve right now, and hopefully we can get him back fast because he had a pretty hot start to the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in terms of players that you think aren't doing as well, some of them I'll throw out there. These 2 are probably the obvious ones, Eddie, and most likely the fan favorites. Bieksa and Bull will probably be the 2 up there that a lot of people will look at and say that haven't done as well on this team. Is there anybody else that you would look at as maybe getting off to a little bit of a slow start so far this season?
I think if you're going to look at guys who you would have expected to do better, I think offensively for Jakob Silfverberg, I think we would have expected him to do a little bit better. He has 1 assist in the first 4 games. Defensively, I can't fault him. I think he's been great defensively through the first 4 games, but you'd expect him to at least have a goal or a couple of points to start the season. And then I think Brandon Montour as well. Again, defensively, I think he's had his moments and he's been good. And then occasionally he's missed assignments or he's been poor defensively. But again, he's got 1 assist through the 4 games. He was one of the guys we expected to quarterback the power play this season with Vatanen being out. And he's had some good looks, but he hasn't taken the reins yet, and that's something we need from him in the next coming games if we're going to, 1, spark the power play, and 2, drive some more offense coming from the blue line.
Yeah, I agree, and that kind of leads into another question you kind of hit on. Josh asked about players stepping up, and I think you're right. I think the ones that really need to so far on this roster, like you said, Silfverberg and Montour, they're kind of the ones that need to get it going. More often. And I think Perry, to some degree, like we said, he had a really good first game. He's been a pest, but I'd like to see him start getting some more goals as well. So those are some of the players I'm looking to maybe hopefully get things going. I'm also looking forward to Eaves, too. I mean, it's only been 1 game. We'll have to see another one, too, but he's out, as Kase. He already had a goal and assist. So that's another one when he gets back to look for as well. Eddie, any other players or even those same ones you think would be ones to watch here in the upcoming week or 2?
No, I think, like you said, Perry is a big one. He had a great first game, 2 goals and an assist, and then offensively there hasn't been anything for the last 3 games. And I think a lot of that comes down to, I think he has to shoot the puck a little bit more. He's only got 12 shots in the first 4 games. I think he can benefit from getting more pucks on net. But other than that, I think having Eaves back is going to help. Like you said, he had a goal in his first game. and the top 9 is starting to take shape. Of course, Ritchie is still out of the lineup, so when he gets back in, we'll have to judge his impact, and hopefully Kase isn't out too long. And then after that, you're going to have Getzlaf, Perry, and Eaves. You're going to have Coghlan over Kell, Silverberg, Kase, Vermette, and Ritchie. So Kase, Vermette, and Ritchie. And I think that top 9, at least until Christmas when Kessler comes back, is a pretty formidable top 9 to have. And I think it's going to come down to chemistry. But if the Ducks can work with that and the guys can continue to excel and step up, they're going to have a pretty good stretch until Ryan Kessler gets back.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that's the key. You look at all those players, and you have all those in the lineup. Even minus Kessler, it's still going to be, good. And if you look at the way the Ducks have done so far, you got to be happy with what you've seen, especially compared, like we said, to the last couple seasons. One other little news that came out, Eddie, not big, but the Ducks did make a trade, kind of a minor league trade. Tokarski went to Philly. The Ducks got Leland Irving, and he's going down to San Diego. So a little bit of a move early in the season. Nothing really big, just kind of a goalie swap. Miller's been injured, so Bear's been backing up Gibson for now. But that'll change once Miller comes back. But that's the only other real news that's happened with the team recently.
Yeah, and really nothing, like you said, nothing big. Tokarski ends up going, wasn't really going to ever see any time with the Ducks, especially with Berra and Miller, and then obviously Gibson in front of him, and then we have another goalie coming back, and like you said, it's a minor league deal, nothing that's going to affect the Ducks short term or long term, so that's why really wasn't really heard of the deal, and both were trades for future consideration, so nothing really headliner to report.
Yeah, and if you have a jersey out there with future considerations on the back, I want to see it because that's a lot of letters to try and put on a jersey. Some other news around the league, Jaromir Jagr is back. He signed a 1-year deal with the Calgary Flames. We did not see him in that game, Eddie, but he did play in the next game against the Kings, in which Calgary did beat the Kings, so I know a lot of you will be happy about that. But it's good around the league, to have Jagr back. He played a little over 13 minutes, didn't have any points. Said he's, got to get a little bit back into the flow of the game, Eddie. But I think a lot of people are happy to see him back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, after the last game, he said, he doesn't feel he was 100% ready for being back. And it's a tough team to break into. It's a very fast, young team. In Calgary, and it's going to be interesting to see how well he does. I mean, he's 45 now, and I'm very interested to see what kind of role he's going to play in the team. Obviously, it's going to be a leadership role for sure, but where he's going to slot in with and what line he's going to play on is interesting for me. They've obviously locked down a line with Tkachuk, Backlund, and Frolik. They've got Monahan and Goodrow together. We've still got guys like Sam Bennett, and there's a lot of options for where he could slot in with this team. I think he benefited a lot playing with Barkov and Huberdeau last season. And I think that's why a lot of teams were hesitant to go out and get him. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact he has. And Calgary's had a good start to the season. I mean, they're 3-1-0 right now without Jagr. Essentially, he did play in the last game, so he was in that game. But, I don't think he's going to have a huge impact, but as for him as a guy and just the legend of a player that he is, it's great to see him still in the league.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's an icon. He's funny. He'll bring leadership to the locker room. And, we'll still get to see him. Obviously the Ducks are going to play Calgary again this season, so hopefully he'll be good to go later on, and we'll see him, at Honda Center in a future day. It's good to see him back with his mullet crew, as they showed on their Twitter. They had the traveling Jagrs, which is pretty hilarious. If you didn't see it, check out Twitter. There's some funny photos on there of him walking around with some of those guys. So he's just a character, and a lot of people are happy to have him back. And only a couple other little minor things. The Penguins, they visited the White House. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about that, but they went there, obviously because of the Stanley Cup champs from last season. We'll see how they do this year. They've kind of been struggling, Eddie. The first couple of games, they kind of literally got their butts kicked. And I know they just lost to Tampa Bay 5-4. So I don't know how they're going to do. That's kind of my other team that I like. But, I don't see them repeating as Stanley Cup champs. I really don't. I think they'll make the playoffs. But, I know they talked about them, how great it would be to be, win 3 and obviously in the salary cap era and all that stuff. And, it's not as easy as in the past, and we talk about some of these other teams, Detroit and the Islanders and some of these powerhouses. What do you think as far as the Penguins' chances this year?
They're kind of turning over on the fly, and it's something that Detroit did so well for so many years, and that's why they continue to make the playoffs year after year after year. And you've got young guys like Jake Gensel now, who's going to have to step up and play a big role. Connor Sheary, Brian Rust, Oli Mata on defense, Brian Dumoulin. A lot of guys are going to have to step up and play bigger roles. And this is the first season for Matt Murray where he has no Marc-Andre Fleury to fall back on. And he really hasn't needed him other than when he got injured. But a lot of guys are going to have to step up and do well for the Penguins. And yeah, they're going to make the playoffs. And I think, when they get into the playoffs, they obviously have that experience now where they can go and they can make a run. And they've obviously got Crosby and Malkin. They've got Kessel. So they've got a lot of offense there. And there's always a chance. Are they favorites? No, I think there are some better teams. But, they've got that experience and they've got that confidence. They're going to make the playoffs and they're going to be a hard team to beat.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I think they'll still make the playoffs and be a tough team to beat. But as far as them going all the way, I don't think so. I don't. Not going to throw out the homer card on them. I don't think that they will. One other thing that came up, you and Patrick kind of talked about this last podcast, and it finally hit the NHL. But we did have one anthem protest. It was JT Brown of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it's been a hot topic, obviously, and a lot of people feel different ways. You either think strongly one way or another. We're not really here to support either side. We just try to present both sides, and you guys can decide for yourself. But I think the interesting thing about this, Eddie, is when we compare the leagues, and this is kind of the thing that irritates me, is how different leagues are coming up with things and some aren't. And Bettman already came out for the NHL and said, hey, it's up to the players. They can do whatever they want. Freedom of speech, yada, 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 which is great. He's saying, if you want to do it, go for it. And that's what Brown did. He didn't kneel. He had his fist up in the air. And, we've seen this in the NBA too. We've seen the NBA saying that they want the players to stand. And then, but if you want to put your fist up or lock arms or do other things, you can do, they're not saying you can't protest in other ways. They just want you to at least stand. So, that's kind of what's been going on now. And then obviously the whole thing that started all this mess has been the NFL, which they can't figure out what to do, which is it's kind of been annoying. And that's what I'm not really happy about with football. It's not the fact that the protests are happening, because, again, that's your right and you're able to do that. That's what makes the United States a great country. That's the First Amendment right. So, and there is no law against it, no matter. And I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying that's the way it is. There's rules that are guidelines, and they say that you should stand and do these things. But there's no hard, fast law. There's no penalties, anything like that, which who knows what Trump's going to do. Maybe he'll try and change that. But, it's just kind of interesting that this comes up now, and it did reach the NHL. I don't think it'll hit the NHL too hard, but, the guy decides to do what he wants to do. And I think the biggest thing, you and I talked about this, is it's not so much that people are doing it, but we got to fix things. People are getting the message out, and it's already been out there, but it's translated into 500 different things, unfortunately. And I think that's part of the problem, Eddie. It's just been convoluted.
Yeah, and to start, I mean, for JT Brown to do that, it's extremely brave for him to do that and be the first guy
Absolutely.
to come out and do that in the National Hockey League. And I think it was great in the way he did it. It wasn't obnoxious. It wasn't, right. He was just trying to get a message across and using his platform to do that. And I totally respect that. And to be honest, when I was talking about this last time, I was worried about the type of reception it would receive in the media and the way the media would spin it and the stories that would come out. And to be fair, I've actually been pretty impressed with the way they've presented it so far. I think they've done it in a respectful and professional way. I was worried that we would see the kind of type of stuff we've seen in the NFL, where it all centers on the player and how he's disrespecting this and how it's just that kind of stuff I was worried about, and it hasn't come to that yet, which I'm happy about, and really we've been able to focus on not just JT Brown, but the message itself. And I think that's the whole point of it. I mean, the whole point of them doing this is to draw attention and awareness to the message. And I think, with the way it's happened in the NHL so far, I think it's been great and it's been able to do that. And unfortunately, it hasn't been able to do that in all sports. And I completely agree with you with it muddying the waters in the way the media presents it. And it's unfortunate, but, it's how it's happened so far. But I'm proud of the way the media has presented it for the NHL so far, and the way it's come out has been good and been positive and brought light to the issue.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's the biggest problem is we need to get away from what to do during the anthem. Obviously, you're going to have an opinion one way or another. I'm not here to tell you that, hey, you need to stand or you need to protest. I mean, that's a individual choice. Like I said, there is no law against it, whichever way you look at it. I mean, me, I stand. That's what I do. But, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell someone else what to do or not do. The thing is we need to get away from all that, and we need to get back to fixing the problem and working together and making the country better. That's the key. We got to stop arguing with each other about how to protest, stop tearing each other apart and tearing each other down, and we got to build each other up. We got to figure this stuff out, and that's the key, and that's, I think, one of the things I liked about starting this whole thing, Eddie, is, this was all just some silly idea to make some T-shirts and, oh yeah, cover the Ducks, whatever. And in doing this, I've met people. Well, for one, hello, you're over there in Canada. And I've made friends with other people over in Canada, made friends with people, Australia, Europe, I mean, all over the world. You meet all these people, you make friends, and everything's, good. I mean, we're not all going to agree on everything. Of course, that's the way the world works, but we respect everybody and we try to work together. And I think if the media could do that in a better sense, then we'd be a much better off country and a better place. And that's the only thing I have to tell you. You may disagree one way or another about this whole issue. Obviously, it's really heated. There's people on each side. I don't get mad at anybody about anything because it's, it's your choice. And that's the way it is. But I think the biggest thing is don't fight with other people. Try to work together and have those discussions and make everything better. And I think if we do that and the way the NHL, the media's done it, I think it's been a good job. Just like you said, Eddie, I think we'll just be better off as a whole.
Yeah, and really, it's a simple fix. Not the issue is a simple fix, but if for argument's sake, for people debating it, just do some research, find what the issue is, find the reason that players are protesting, understand why they're doing it and what it's about. And then it's easier to deal with the situation because from what I've seen, a lot of people have no idea what's going on. And most of the blame has to fall on the media. I mean, the actual issue and the reason players are doing this rarely gets put out there, and it's because it's a hot topic. It is difficult to discuss in an article on a website like NHL.com, NFL.com, whatever. It's difficult to come up and discuss those topics. You usually see things centered on the player, centered on why they're doing this. How it's bad that they're not standing during the national anthem whatsoever, and I just plead people who don't understand just to do some research, understand why they're doing this, what the message is, and just have a better understanding of why it's happening, so that we don't have to deal with it, so there aren't arguments, so there aren't debates, so we're not split apart on the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's unfortunate that, and this isn't everybody, but certain people in the media have decided to make it such a big issue, and it's making people more divisive instead of together. So it's unfortunate. And, at a time like this too, Eddie, there's a lot going on in the world. And I know a lot of you out there, we talked about Vegas. I like we said, we were affected here with our IT guy. There's other people that we work with outside of this that were there. I know that there's those of you listening that either know somebody or you were there. And then, it hit home too this last week. We had all these fires all over the state of California. We even had them in Anaheim. And I know that there's fans affected by that. I almost had to evacuate my own parents and their animals and everything out of their house. The fire was only about a mile or so from their house. Luckily, nothing happened to them. I feel bad for all the other people that did lose their homes or lost part of their property, whatever did happen. And I think that's the other thing we got to look at. There's a lot going on in this world, all these crazy hurricanes and all this stuff, that life's too short. We got to work together and help each other out. That's something that, we try to do here too. And we've donated to, the Vegas incident. We donated to the fires too. And that's one thing we'll put in the article, like where to go. But I just briefly mention that if you want to help out too, you can go, there's a GoFundMe page. If you go to their website, look up Las Vegas Victims Fund, look up with the one that has the Vegas government on there. They're the ones that put it together. Like I said, we'll post the link on there. Also, if you want to help people for the fires and whatnot, you can go to redcross.org/donate, and you can help anybody with the fires, here in Orange County or across the state, because there's just been so many. It's been crazy. Those ones up in Napa devastated several neighborhoods, which is terrible. So there's a lot of these issues going on, and we encourage you guys to get involved. And, that's one thing I think I like about doing this too, Eddie, is, we talk about sports and we talk obviously about hockey and all that the most, but we try to help people out in the community as well. And I think that's, a good thing to do. We don't have a lot of money. We're not that successful, contrary to popular belief, but we do try to help people when we can, Eddie.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's the great thing about sports in general, and doing things like we're doing here is it brings people together. Yes, it's a distraction, and it's a way to get away from the things happening in life, but it's also a way to focus on those things and bring people together instead of separate people apart. And how many times have we seen it? We saw that with Boston Strong, with the Boston Bruins and the Red Sox and everything after the bombings, and then we're seeing it now with Vegas Strong, with the whole league centering around the Vegas Knights and the efforts there for the victims of the tragedy in Vegas. So it's just great for everybody to come together around sport, and it's such a great platform for people to get together, come together, and be a community.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what, we try to do on here too. We reach out to the community here as well. Obviously, a majority is SoCal fans, but we know that there's people around the world as well that listen to us because we talk about the Ducks, and there's Ducks fans. A majority are here, California, but obviously everywhere else. So with that, we're going to, wind up this show. This is the first one of the actual official season. It's kind of the format we'll have. If you hadn't listened to the show before, that's what we usually do. We go over the games that they played, injury news, any kind of roster moves, anything like that. We talk about the league news, and then we usually end it with fan questions, or sometimes we sprinkle them throughout the show. But that's kind of the format with the way we'll do each show on a weekly basis, or maybe a week and a half, depending on how the schedule pans out for the season. And, with that, we appreciate your support. Make sure you support everybody out there. Love each other instead of tearing each other down, as we talked about. And we'll be back in a week. Let's go Ducks.